are going to get a little bit more practical now. Me, myself, I work in an industry. I meet customers. These are people, both women and men, who build systems. So sometimes I think that how can I make these people think beforehand about the kind of systems they are building, and how to change the way how they think about this, so that we wouldn't have to fix problems later in courts, but we would fix it during design when it's hopefully still cheaper. So we've been working quite a bit on risk management, and over the last, let's say, a year, a team in our organization had the pleasure of working together with the Ministry of Justice and Digital Affairs and the Equal Rights Commissioner here in Estonia to create as simple of a risk management tool that we could think of. The idea was that if we give a leader, business leader, public sector leader, a simple tool, maybe like on the level of a 5th grade worksheet at school, then maybe they would find AI bias avoidance fun enough to do it. So we didn't reach the level that it's like 5th grade math. It's slightly harder, but still I think we did rather well. But today we're going to have an exercise where we are going to together estimate a risk. And for that, I would like you to imagine a scenario which will now appear on the screen, I hope, if technology allows. Thank you. So imagine the following scenario. There is an unemployment insurance fund in a European member state. They are creating an AI-based system that matches job seekers with job offers or training opportunities. Sounds very reasonable. The AI interacts with both the caseworkers and the job seekers. The job seekers get weekly email notifications about offers for job or a training program that would fit with their profile. And the idea is that this very direct intervention should be reducing the workload of the caseworkers. It's more direct. However, the system also provides caseworkers with preliminary recommendations which they can review and then present to the job seeker if they meet. And that's again supposed to reduce the workload of the caseworker. And in the end, there is also always the economic aspect that to reduce the number of caseworkers needed to uphold this public service. So the idea is that the caseworkers review these recommendations, but sometimes, it's maybe a bad day, there's a lot of job seekers, and they just read what the computer says. So what happens is that now we have reports coming in from job seekers and caseworkers saying that the AI is giving weird outputs. It seems not everything is matched. So there's a report of a 53-year-old senior civil servant who has extensive professional experience, and they have been suggested to become a long-distance bus driver. Not a perfect match, possibly. And then a 29-year-old man at the same time, with no higher education, has been offered to become an advisor in a ministry. Or a 55-year-old female IT project manager with decades of experience in digital transformation is suggested to become a warehouse operative position. The engineers have been consulted with. They say that this is an anomaly. They don't know why this is happening. So now what I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you to give 2 grades to this scenario. And this scenario has an impact and a likelihood. You can think of likelihood as a probability, but the statisticians among you will say this is a different measure. So for impact, we're looking at grades from 1 to 4. 1 is that there are potential financial losses affecting less than 1% of a population, and very high financial losses may affect over 10% of a population. Now, what I'm asking you to do is in your head, build a chain of events leading from the threat description to the impact. Think how many people could be affected. And you can ask me why I'm looking for damages. I'm looking for damages for a sadly pragmatic reason, because decision makers are often compelled by seeing losses and explaining. I will be very blunt, I apologize. Sometimes explaining to decision makers and people in power things about equality and fundamental rights is a bit complicated. So recently I have become very pragmatic. I've tried to convince that people are actually losing jobs because of you or losing their income because of you. And that works slightly better in my experience. But again, this is just a task. We can discuss this later. The second part is that I'd like you to give a likelihood to this impact. Means that you can imagine how many people will be affected and then try to say how quickly this happens or how possible this is. If you give a 4, then this is already occurred or is inevitable. It happens within days. It's very likely. It's basically certain. For 3, it's highly likely and there is proof of it. It happens likely within a month. And average, the threat is possible, but there are few known cases. Within a year, maybe the damage happens. And low, the threat is theoretical or very rare. So now you have to balance these two numbers in your head. Think of which combination is the most right. And you can think of it like this, that obviously, yes, you can see that with a very low probability, a massive damage will occur, but try to be pragmatic. Think about the worst case that could happen and how probable this is. This is my suggestion for thinking. And this is the important part. This is what people call a QR code these days. And if you scan this, your phone cameras will give you a prompt, hopefully, to open a web page. This web page has the same text for your reading, and it has a chance for you to enter these two numbers. Everything on the slides is provided also on that website. And what's going to happen is that while we are talking here, maybe you can give the 2 grades, and in about some minutes, once we conclude the panel, I will magically have here 2 more slides, or 1 or 2 more slides, prepared by the person who led the project on the methodology, and I will try to explain to you how you felt about this and try to interpret your thought processes here. It's going to be fun, I'm certain. So, did you everybody get it who wanted to get it? Great success. Thank you very much. Now I think it is time to get to the actual panel. For that, it's not going to be only me on board. There also will be several other people. So it is my absolute honor to invite Valérie Fontaine, please. She is the advisor for the French Defender of Rights. Next up we have Menno Ettema, who is the head of hate speech, hate crime and artificial intelligence unit in the Anti-discrimination department of the Council of Europe. Please. Joining us next, Milla Vidina, and she is a senior policy officer at Equinet. Please. And it is my pleasure to also invite Rūta Juodelytė. She is a senior advisor at the Equal Opportunities Mainstreaming Group at the Equal Opportunities Ombudsperson of Lithuania. So we are talking about governing AI and what works. So let's start with an initial round of questions. And the question I'm going to pose for you allows you to answer in a very flexible way. You can tell about something you really want to talk about today. So let's get that out of the way. So in your work, what do you think is first of all, what's the thing that you've done within the last year or two that you're most proud of? And in your heart, what do you consider more important? Making sure that there is education and the next generations are able to make the world more equal, or do you want to go into the field today and change the systems of today? You can try saying both. Valérie, if you may.
Okay, thank you. So maybe I will recall where I'm talking from. So I'm working for the French Defender of Rights, which is an equality body, but we have also other mandates. So equality is like everywhere, and we have one important mission, which is really important because it's 80% of what we're doing is like dealing with the rights of users of public services. So it's a question also of equality within these public services. We have also the protection and promotion of children's rights, and also there is a question of equality, of course. And we tackle also the behavior of police security, of law enforcement, and also there's of course a question of discrimination equality. And the last one, the most recent, is the protection of whistleblowers. So we can have whistleblower on AI, and a whistleblower can also be themselves considered as a victim of discrimination when they give an alert and they have repercussion on the alert they do. So these are the 5 missions that are, AI is on every one of those missions, and also equality. So we've been working on AI since like many years right now. And the first thing we did is really to talk and to have a dialogue with the academics. So I think it was really an interdisciplinary approach where we try to discuss with the philosophical economics, of course lawyers also, to really see what is an algorithmic bias and what is a discrimination. So this was really a starting point, and with those discussions we really tried to also work with our Data Protection Commission, and together we've published a recommendation. It was like already 6 years ago. It was really to raise awareness, saying what is algorithm bias, what we've been talking for since yesterday, and how can we tackle. So the role of our institution is really to put also the subject on the table, and we have this particularity of being an independent public institution, which is at the cross borders of many different stakeholders. So we have a really important dialogue with the civil society organization, but also with the government, with the parliament. So this unique position makes us having this legitimacy to say that we are there to be sure that the law is applied, and also to follow the development of the law, because as we said, technology is going faster and the law is trying to fix it. And so to answer the question, what I'm being maybe more proud of those maybe last years, I worked on an educational program, so it's going to be answering also the second point. We did a program to teach young people, so children from 6 years old to young people. So what is exactly law? Why is it important? Why do we have to have rules? What is the rule of law? And why is it different in every country? Why is it moving, changing with the society? And there is one point specifically on digital rights of children. And so this has been created several years ago, and now we're working on updating this program to include AI and all the digital rights that are really having an impact, because we really see, and many organizations like Amnesty International several years ago already did some study to see the impact, we talked about it yesterday, I think, the impact of mental health of the use of AI by children. So we talked also by those AI companions. So now children are really more and more speaking with AI rather than humans, and so they have also someone talking to them, saying that I agree with you, I understand you. So it's a lot of empathy, and so they're not learning to have different opinions. So we can really see that there is going to be an impact, a strong impact on children, on the way they grow and the way they get also the education. So I think there is a very big challenge on how AI is used by education to educate people. So this is another topic. So this was a question about what I'm proud of is this program, and it's in evolution. It's still evoluting, and we worked also with teachers, and we work with children, and we consult a lot of each time the children when we're developing something. So the importance is to build for the future, and also to be tackling right now, and so we have to do both to answer your question.
Very diplomatic. Thank you very much, Valérie. Menno, please.
Yes. Thank you for inviting me also to the organizers. Maybe like you, I'll start a little bit from where my starting point is. I work in the Council of Europe, in the anti-discrimination department. So my starting point is very much those who are affected, targeted, discriminated by AI systems, but also hate speech and hate crime and others. And what I think is very interesting, that the unit that I'm with is, we're very much in the intersection between standard setting, which is part of the Council of Europe's work, and yesterday you heard about the Framework Convention on AI and human rights, democracy and the rule of law. We have monitoring work, so ECRI, the European Commission Against Racism and Intolerance, now is also starting to work on monitoring and asking equality bodies and other national partners, is there AI issues and what's going on? So that's the monitoring work. And our unit is working on really the cooperation, engaging with member states, with national authorities, equality bodies, civil society, and other actors, police, prosecution, etc. Really, how do you translate this standard into practice? And I think that's why we're sitting here. This is the question. How do you do this in practice? And I find that a very fascinating question because it's not so easy, as you will all know here in the room. So one of the things that we are working on, just a little bit on the standards, because we know about the Framework Convention introduced yesterday, we're now working within the organization on sectorial instruments, standards, soft laws. So for example, hopefully in the next month, there will be, the Committee of Ministers will adopt a recommendation on AI and equality, which really is a commitment by the member states to say, okay, we want to work in this way towards dealing with discrimination and enhance equality in the AI systems and life cycle of an AI systems. So we'll see. They first have to commit, and then we'll have to start working with them on how to do it. And then what I'm proud of is that the colleagues in my team, I think the honor goes to them, at working together with equality bodies in different countries, particularly Belgium and Finland and Portugal, shout out to their work and experts. We've been working now on different research, for example, to understand the legal frameworks that are out there, the anti-discrimination legal frameworks, but also the AI, the new frameworks. So how can we use those and what are the gaps? So this is already referred to by the previous speaker, and I could talk about it more. And then we built this other publication, which is really a flip-through guide of explaining where different regulations could be used in your practice. So what is article so-and-so in this convention, how could it be used, etc. So very practical. So this is already a translation of legislation into how can you use it, particularly as equality bodies. In addition, we've set up this training course. We already worked a long time with France, and it's been very appreciated cooperation. So we have this training course on understanding the risks of discrimination by AI systems, legal frameworks that are in place, and how this then looks very practically and how can you use it. So what's the redress? And what I find very interesting is that, well, we developed at the European level, but we always make it then translated to national languages, but also added a module on national context. Because in the end, that's the question. Every country has different national legal context. So you really need to make it practical and understandable, the European, and how does it link it to the national law, and how can you use that. And what I find particularly interesting is when we run it and we invite not only equality bodies, but other regulators, data protection, but also the banking sector or insurance sector or etc. The fact that they're in one room and talking and understanding how each one has a role to play to uphold human rights values and human rights principles and law and anti-discrimination law, that is the space where it happens. To understand who's doing what and how can we work, what information can we exchange and how can we facilitate it. So that's one thing. So I really appreciate that work, and I think it's really sparking discussion at national level. And the last point I just wanted to say, and I'll talk more about it later maybe, is that we are also trying to develop now an assessment protocol, and we're in the middle of that. And I find it very interesting to work with those 3 equality bodies. If you get a case, then what? What questions do you ask? What data do you search? Which legislation do you apply to make your argument? How do you reverse the burden of proof? And then when you get the data, how do you interpret it and how do you build? So this is an assessment protocol in the middle of drafting, and I find it fascinating, and I'm very proud that we're doing that. So for me, the education is very important, but I think we need to do it now, and we need to now act. And there's already so much expertise shared by so many people, and how do we bring people together and learn together? I think that's the space we need to create, learning together.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let's please move on.
Yeah, I was reaching for the microphone, but apparently...
Yes, attached to you.
Yeah. Well, then you stated a question. So first of all, I speak My name is Milla Vidina, and I speak on behalf of Equinet, which is the European network of national equality bodies. We have colleagues from 2 equalities bodies here on the panel, and a trusted ally, Menno. So we have been working actually with Menno for a number of years. What Equinet does is a core part of our work is capacity building. Just to answer your question, you know, what do we do? Engage with existing practices or change the future? Well, we engage with existing practices, but what we are doing now could change the future. So we have been, since 2019, really focused, developed a series of capacity building events, but also some tools and resources for civil servants from across Europe working for public equality authorities. And we've also engaged with legislative developments. So we were involved with political negotiations of the European AI Act, also the Framework Convention on AI, and as Menno already mentioned, the recommendation on AI inequality. And always good so far, but as done if you don't mind, I would share it with them. We had a preparatory call, and at one moment, a provocative, but I think spot-on comment came by Dan saying, but this is OPDFs. And this is OPDFs, meaning, for example, what we sometimes do, like policy guidelines or legislative advice. And I thought, this is so true. This is exactly true. And this is where I get to the other bit. So normally what we do is policy legal engagement, capacity building. But as of 2 years ago, we've started looking into the future through education, but not education of, it seems to me that mostly in the human rights sphere, we assume, we take it for granted that it is us who do not know, right? We need to somehow bring ourselves up to date with technology. But how about the other side? Technologies should also bring themselves up to date with equality and human rights, right? But we take it for granted that it's only us that need to do the learning. So at Equinet, we started to do something different, namely reaching out to the tech community of developers, software engineers, data scientists, and raise awareness about equality and non-discrimination. And how did we do this? Well, we reached to European standardization organizations. So we got active with technical standardization. Some of you might have heard that the European AI Act rests upon technical standards for its implementation. This means that the complex technical legal rules need to be translated, that's what it is, into what they call operational language. So basically it means that law is translated into a set of technical specifications. As expressed in European standards, you probably heard ISO, IEEE, right? You would see this in different devices, electronics. But those are, of course, medical devices, heavy machinery. So standards have been a feature of, they're necessary. It's a trade necessity, interoperability of products. But what has not been done, and which is novel and unprecedented, is to try to tackle fundamental rights risks to standards. And this is what the AI Act could potentially do, because it requires technical standards to address health, safety, and this is the original third part, fundamental rights risks. So we were fortunate through a small academic grant from the UK, led by the distinguished academic Professor Karen Young, to engage with technical standardization for the AI Act. So basically we've been working with technical committees that develop a set of standards. And if you ask me what I won't go into details, but just basically it's about transparency and human oversight. It's about how you define what is a risk to fundamental rights, how do you define an appropriate risk management measure, how do you mitigate risks against fundamental rights? And should we follow the same approach vis-a-vis risk to fundamental rights that we already have established practice on health and safety? So we hope that with this it would have a kind of a ripple effect just for us being there, because it is really a community of where across Europe and not only technical experts are. We hope that at least them listening to some of the arguments we give. Those are meetings that they take place each week. It's for 5 to 10 hours sometimes, depending on the meetings. And just sensitizing the community and raising awareness, I hope in the long term it would create a new way of talking about fundamental rights risks at this very operational, technical level, and make the technologists think about fundamental rights just as we are concerned about our technological ignorance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, Rūta.
Last but not the least, I guess, yes. So I also come from the equality body, as Valérie is. We are much smaller than France. We cover specifically equality. And I come from the mainstreaming department, equality mainstreaming department. This is usually not a very clear term and not usually understood within the public. And in simple terms, equality mainstreaming means that it's a horizontal approach in every single topic of public and private life, where we need to ask a question if we give a service, if we give if we provide a product, if we create a product, so who is going to use it? How can I make that everyone can use it? How do I make sure that it doesn't discriminate indirectly as well? And now in AI, even on proxy level, yes. So mainstreaming equality is like a set of mind where you always have to have several check of questions where you ask when creating something, when basically going into policy formation or product development. So this comes to my points of what matters for me in my achievements and what we do. We consider within our equality body preventive work as of major value. And I guess that's what you said with your work. This is usually also not even cheaper, but more effective. It's much more effective to find problems in advance than to make them go when something already exists. So about those achievements, we are not so equipped with so much experience as French equality body within AI field, but we do have one product that we have just developed. It's a preventive it's a preventive measure. It's a very short, introductory online course developed within this project about how to tackle bias within public sector. It is a very practical approach for all public sector which wants to work within AI to develop tools, projects, whatever, how to actually consider bias from the idea that I want to have something. Well, and obviously 1 hour is very little, so I emphasize the introductory part. Now the question about what matters more, preventive things or the tackling of the problems as they are. I mean, in a probably very ideal world, I would think that preventive would be enough. But unfortunately, we have never lived in such a world, and I don't expect to live in near future. That's why I think we still need to work on both, because even when you work on preventive measures, you don't necessarily think and know that they will be enacted, and not necessarily in a bad intention. Some things, especially within AI, are very, very unconscious and not meant to be in advance, like never thought of. So I do consider preventive measures as quite major within the topic of AI, but equality generally, on equality level generally. So I would probably emphasize the need to work hard on it.
We need to work hard, that's for sure. Everybody in the auditorium, everybody who's looking at the stream, I have successfully found a place where the questions that you write into the live stream go. So if you write anything there, I will see it. There will be live questions also from the auditorium, so that you know. Right, I love the word mainstreaming.
Oh,
I
you
love
and
the
me
word.
both.
Yeah.
Come
So
work with us.
Yes, I do believe that I am at a good place myself. Now, my question is that how do you reach... Okay, I will give you an illustrative example. When we did our research and to prepare for this worksheet we found that, yes, there is this famous case, this Netherlands Siri case. People know how that worked. There wasn't actually any AI in it, but it's sort of still any AI as in we define it in EU AI Act or OECD definitions. But there was a moment in the development of the system where a human had to make a choice between a number of rules and then decide that, for example, a rule that says that if a person has a diesel-powered car, it is an increased risk. Or if a person lives above a bar, it is increased risk. Could we go through all of you, and every one of you tells me how will you reach that data analyst with your outreach, so that the next time they have to make such a choice, they will make a better one?
Well, you want to start
Yes,
with me?
please.
Well, the famous Netherlands case allows us to learn a lot. So at some point, we have to be happy that it happened.
I am very happy.
I'm not, because too many people were affected in very, very bad way. But let's hope we will learn from it. I do think that our very short introductory online course does touch the fact that some questions need to be asked in advance. And this question of diesel over a non-diesel, to my knowledge, was seen more with more than just two pair of eyes. They were like a set pair of eyes, and nobody thought that this is not a wrong question to ask, not even in a very mild way. So I do think that one of the jobs that we need to do to reach the people who are actually working on the development of those cases are also the public sector people who ask the right questions. Did you take this into account? Where comes the question of mainstreaming? You need to know which questions to ask. So I feel like I'm safe with my job as long as my country says this, that we're still a democracy and we continue to work on equality. But from that point of view, where I need to address public sector to ask the right questions to the developers is a difficult part. It's not an easy approach. So one step that we made, this is one online course. We also will have few online trainings. We have on a national level an agency working on a training set for public sector, how to actually involve matters of fundamental rights, data protection, security, cybersecurity when developing AI systems. So this is where I also see a way in to talk to also those developers, because this is like through the procurement procedure, one of the ways. This is what you wanted to.
Yeah, this is pretty much what I was hoping for. But because the question is that you can make a training program. I've also written PDFs. So when I say that PDFs are not enough, then I also blame myself. But the question is that how does that analyst, out of their day of taking care of their kids, going to work, doing their job, will also take time to worry about fundamental rights. But procurement requirements is an excellent point. I would like to highlight that. Yes, thank you. Let's move on.
Yeah, well, maybe by supporting the capacity of Rūta and others, members of the Equinet AI working group, maybe, I hope indirectly, we also contribute to spreading awareness. So our members are equality authorities, right? And we have been working for what 6 or 7 years now through trainings, resources to build their capacity, so that hopefully they could go to the national level and work with other regulators. Ultimately shape public procurement contracts. For example, I know that our British member, the UK Equality and Human Rights Commission, with whom we were in a joint project, it's the technical standards project, Equality by Design, Deliberation and Oversight. It's a framework for AI governance. There are many resources on our website. Well, our UK member, for example, developed a methodology for equality mainstreaming in procurement contracts, and then trained or uses it for municipalities. So that's one concrete example, but I know, for example, that in Finland, our Finnish member, I believe the Finnish government was it 2022 that they came up with an algorithmic anti-discrimination framework. It was developed at the ministerial level, I think, and I know it is used also in procurement. So hopefully through our role in building the capacity. And then the second bit you asked, how do we make sure is, well, through working with those software engineers and data scientists at technical standardization, increasing their sensitivity to the practical implications of what they do, because it's one way to say, oh, there are fundamental rights risks, but actually another way to have a methodology in annex within a technical standard. A technical standard, so let's say 20, 30-page documents with technical specifications, where you actually have case studies. If you do that, that could happen, you know, hypothetical case studies where you illustrate how a fundamental right, possible violations implicated. So making it more tangible, more concrete to them, through having those this equality and fundamental rights expertise present in technical standardization is I hope that through this way we would leave a trace. And then obviously my hope is that we would end up having technical standards that actually contain the amendments, the revisions which we are proposing. But this is also a political process, so we have no guarantee on that. But at the minimum, and this already I think has an added value, being there, raising awareness among the broader technical community, I'm convinced. I also saw that you know, technologists and including big companies, they're not monsters. Huh? Everybody, no. Actually, I found in some ways, ironically, and I won't cite, I found more will and open-mindedness at technical standardization fora that I found at some political intergovernmental fora, and I won't cite places. Yeah.
Having been working in working groups in ISO for about 10-15 years, I totally agree. But the question is that those people who write those standards are not the ones who decide whether they will be adopted. So there is a lot of idealism in the working groups, but during adoption there is a sober counting of money. And deciding on this 30-40 page standard might take 2 years to implement.
One last bit. In Europe, when technical standards are used for EU legislation, they're called harmonized standards. So they have a different legal effect than ISO standards. And because of that, they're subject to public scrutiny. There is a public consultation of draft standards at the national level through your national standardization bodies. I would not necessarily advocate for you to go out and reach out. Those are sometimes, it's a business-dominated fora. But what you could do, and what we all could do, is the European Commission at one stage would have to give its blessing, so to say, approval to the draft standards. So there is a public accountability. It is this point of acceptance where we could exert some pressure and say, no, this would not be acceptable for us to. So at least we have some leverage and some accountability, because it's public, it's a public sphere, because it's for the public good, which ISO doesn't have.
Correct. I agree with you there. The European CEN and European standards bodies are somewhat different. The whole story of harmonized standards is a separate one. Thank you for clarifying this. Menno, please.
Well, I have the feeling that, first of all, I need to echo what the colleagues are just already saying. And then maybe I steer it in a slightly different direction. Apart from the fact that I think it's also important to acknowledge that, for example, the Council of Europe is also working on the DERIA standardized form of human rights impact assessment. And I think there is work to do in coordinating and standardizing some of these procedures so that we talk the same language, also across countries, because this would also help the industry if we have a more coherent approach between us in the anti-discrimination field. And I also echo again that I think there is overall people have the best interest in mind. They want to, but then of course economic considerations, there are various considerations. So it's very much how do you entice and engage and inform and keep them on board. And I think this is very much also who do you talk to? I mean, in bigger companies, there are the technicians, but there are also those who are engaged with the deployers. And so there's also there's different dialogue spaces. So internally in the company, they need to have that. The technicians need to be receptive for feedback. but those who are engaging with the deployers and municipalities, public institutions, they need to set out very clearly what they need and how in that dialogue. And that needs to be an inclusive process. Going for the Netherlands, for example, we did a training course there on AI and non-discrimination. And we had people from the medical sector, for example, in the room, nurses, basically. And I had never thought of this, but they were saying, yes, we have now more and more machines that analyze the blood, and it doesn't work well for people from Suriname background. And well, then you can, of course, rationalize why that is. But it's these kind of very practical things which are blind spots that we don't see if we don't have deployers that actually also think about responsibilities and who do you work for and who do you use and have that dialogue. So it's a very much creating that space and bringing people on board in this process, in the procurement, in the deployment, and then monitoring afterwards. But I want to make a different point. We're referring to the Dutch case, and then we're talking about the childcare benefits scheme that completely backfired. People were tagged as fraudulent, and then what I think is missing in the discussion is the fact that it's not only the AI system that flagged, or actually algorithmic system, it wasn't AI, flagged people on discriminatory grounds, but it's also the legal context that this took place. Because in the Netherlands in that time there was a very harsh policy in place within the tax authorities because of past cases of fraud, that the tax authorities were forced to have a zero tolerance policy towards fraud, causing the fact that if you were flagged, then you had to pay back the whole amount plus fines, and you didn't have any payment regime. So normally, if you can't pay, the tax authority provides you a payment regime, looks at your situation. Yes. Installments, yes. But it wasn't allowed if you were fraudulent. So the hit is very hard. So it's also the inflexibility of the wider legal context. So if we deploy AI systems and we know that there are risks and biases, maybe we should also look at how do we deploy, what's the oversight, how flexible are we, and be context specific, because it is about the whole context and the setup and how we deploy and manage the rollout and deal with risks. And for me, this is very much a cultural way of thinking. I think now, first of all, I think technical services is a public good. I mean, technical services, AI, it should be a public good that benefits all. This basically means that we really need to start thinking, okay, who is impacted and how? But we also need to create a culture of quickly responding if something goes wrong. We're very afraid of mistakes in the public service, and when it comes, who's responsible? But I think the question is not so much who's responsible, but when something happens, can we act quickly, flag it quickly, because the consequences of something goes wrong is very fast and very quick because it's an AI system. So I think we also need to really work at cultural level of being able to accept that things go wrong and anticipate and react quickly and flexibly. This is also a whole new way of thinking of how do we do public services, how do we engage with the end users and with the developers. The whole legal context needs to change in that sense.
So Valérie, the developer of an AI system most likely today uses AI to develop the system. So how do you make sure that when an engineer in 5 years asks whatever their coding assistant is, that how should I implement this new social benefit system, then the AI tells her or him, you should also care about bias?
Yeah, I want also to point that I will come back to the prevention thing,
of course,
but also to really point the risk of not taking into account the risk for an engineer, for a company developing the tool, for the organization buying the tool. So it's really also a cost, because if you discriminate, if you don't respect fundamental rights, you can have court decisions. So this also risk is so important, and we don't have enough court decisions because we don't have enough complaints. People are not aware that they're being targeted by an algorithm and that the decision has been made. So the more we will have case law decision from equality bodies, from courts, of course, the more the risk will be seen by everyone using or developing the tools. And also the reputational risk is important for a company. So an engineer also wants to protect his company and to be sure that they will be not subject to risk of the courts. And as we saw in the Syria case, it cost the government, because the government resigned because of this case. And so you have to also, the role also is to be sure that people are aware that the risk is huge not to mitigate the risk. So this was the point on really the sanction, the importance of sanction, and the AI Act also really prevails some important fines. So this is quite important. So if we'll have really the implementation of this AI Act, I think in the omnibus the sanction part is not under discussion right now. But so this is important to have the rules and to have the sanctions and to have the implementation of the rule. And I think it's concerning everyone as a citizen. We try to respect the rules. And for more the prevention, promotion for a future engineer, it's important to also for her to be informed of what is fundamental rights, what is a discrimination, and we're working right now with the university to build new master's course, new university course to really train also future engineers, but also current professionals to also have the ethic aspect. And today it's not really an engineer training. It has really like very few hours of ethics, if none. I don't know here in Estonia if there is a special ethics.
Just yesterday, I gave the first lecture, this term's first lecture. We've been giving the course for about 5 or 6 years on privacy, technical approaches, how to improve privacy. I had 40 people in the auditorium, 55 are registered, and about 2/3 of them were data science masters. So I have great hopes for Estonia.
Were there girls in this?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Because this is also not important.
No.
Point we already
it's computer science and data science people, and there were lots of ladies in the room.
Okay. So if you have more diversity in engineer, not only gender but also all types of diversity, yes. It's important for them to be also to include the prevention by what it.
Now is a great time for me to ask for questions from the auditorium. Raise your hand. I hope I can see you. Yes, there is at least one. Here in the middle, somebody with a mic. There also. I don't have the microphone. Somebody hopefully fetches the microphone. Yes, the microphone is coming. Please, first the lady and the gentleman.
Hi, yes. I work for the Netherlands Institute for Human Rights, and we handle all of the complaints from the child care benefits scandal. Unfortunately, in the Netherlands, the government has somewhat learned from this by implementing some impact assessments for human rights, which the government is supposed to hand in. But I was wondering on your reflections, because a lot of these impact assessments are published publicly, but then when you read them, they're like, we have looked at the system and there's no discrimination. Yeah. And then there's really no real explanation how they've come to this conclusion. And also, if there's any in-depth explanations, mostly about discrimination, maybe something about privacy, but all the other human rights are not addressed at all, even though they are very much affected as well. And I was wondering about your reflections about how to actually maybe mainstream human rights knowledge into these systems and how to actually get people to take responsibility for what the systems are doing. Because sometimes the conclusion is also there might be discrimination, but there's nothing else. We have to innovate, so we're going to do it anyway.
Yes.
And
I'm totally going to give you at least one of your word, because we can't have 4 of you answering each question. Yeah. But I have to jump in here. The thing is that recently you can have fundamental rights impact assessments, data protection impact assessments, AI impact assessments. The number of impact assessments you can have for a digital system is rather notable. In technical standards, at some point, they got to this thing that there's integrated management systems. So we can also have integrated impact assessments. Would be a lot cheaper, by the way. But the question is that I've seen several times where an impact assessment document is used to write down that there is no problem. Move along. These are not the droids you're looking for. So there is no problem. It's all good. We're going to build it. And you just have written the document, you have ticked the box. So how do we improve? Somebody's volunteering one. Yes. Yeah, how do we improve impact assessments?
No. Let's not limit ourselves to impact assessments.
Innovation.
No, because I see this. There are also impact assessment under ISO. There is a standard about impact. There is. And they're so generic. Yes. So there is, let's talk. And there is no link. I don't know how it is in the Netherlands. I know that you're, I know you were the first country in the EU, in Europe actually, to introduce public impact assessments, but they're not enforceable, right? It has no, there are no consequences for the organization that has has wrongly or incompletely, right? So first, this would be one thing that I think legislatively needs to be changed. Make them have teeth. Just like with the A Act, there is also a fundamental rights impact assessment template that is to be developed, but it's not clear what is the link with post-market monitoring and enforcement. What are the consequences? Now, going even beyond, I think that it would be useful just to have, outside the fundamental rights assessment, have independent oversight. So independent auditing. So we do not have to rely on companies marking their own homework. We would also have an independent statutorily mandated oversight structure. And in the A Act, you have it for products under the so-called old and new legislative framework. So this would be things such as medical devices, machinery, toys, etc. But you do not have it for the fundamental rights critical Annex 3. There it's self-evaluation. So you really kind of are left to whatever the company fills in terms of a fundamental rights impact assessment, not to mention that there is a plethora of different ones, with data protection. And then the last bit is continuous monitoring and evaluation. So if you do the fundamental rights impact assessment, it's not at once. It has to be, the results need to be updated, and it's iterative process. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I apologize. I will take the next question from the person in the front row. Can we have a microphone there, please? Yes.
Thank you. I actually had two questions. We'll see if we have time. So the first question is to Valérie, because you worked with children's rights. I'm wondering, when it comes to protecting children from AI-based or AI-assisted gender-based violence, and of course we can ask platforms to do things. I'm wondering, without putting any blame on the children to protect themselves, but strengthening them, is there anything that schools and parents can do to make them more resilient, or to meet this thing, because we are not able maybe to address all of the problems that come with that from just holding platforms responsible. And then the second question I have is for the colleague from the Council of Europe. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. A while back, I interviewed a person from the Council of Europe because I also write articles for a Swedish association of privacy professionals who work with the GDPR, and I interviewed a man named Jan Kleijsen who was talking about the scandal in the Netherlands, and he said that there was something called the Venice Commission, which is a body within the Council of Europe, and their conclusion was that what happened in the Netherlands could happen anywhere. And if you are willing to comment on that, could you tell me if you feel that you are confident that the new framework, the convention from the Council of Europe on the rule of law, and I don't remember the whole name of it, if you feel that it sufficiently addresses this problem so that it lowers the likelihood that something similar can happen again somewhere in the Council of Europe member states.
So Valérie goes first, I think.
Yes, for what we did for children, we also worked together with the Data Protection Commission and the Audiovisual Independent Authority to gather together the tools we had for the children for the promotion, and those were directly for the children, but also for the one working with them. So of course the family first, the parents, but also for the teachers. And those tools were really to make them aware of what their use online, and how to protect their own privacy, and how to be sure to protect also from any discrimination. And what we're also doing is we have a youth program which is called Young Ambassadors for Equality and for Children's Rights, and those are young people that we recruit for civil service for 9 months, and they are trained by us on equality, non-discrimination. Not so much on digital rights, but we're going to maybe have more importance on these topics. And then they go directly to the young people and children. So it's young people talking to young people. So it have more effective, more impact on the way they have to be careful to protect themselves. But it does not. It still is the responsibility, of course, of the platform, but we're also working on the responsibility of people, how they use those platforms, and we also listen a lot to what the NGOs are doing, and I mentioned Amnesty International, that this important report on TikTok algorithm that has really this terrible effect of when people are going to look for, I don't know, sad content, and they will have a really strong algorithm is sending them more and more terrible content that incite to suicide and there are still some cases from families saying that their children has been committed suicide because of the content they receive, because of the algorithm. So this is something platforms are also, and there is a Digital Service Act, there are some legal tools, but it's also a way to be sure that young people are aware of how can they protect also themselves, and how to have also a critical approach. And this is for me really important. It's really the critical minds that everyone has to have today, because we really need to be aware of the risk, what we're using and how we're using it.
I would really hope that it takes a few generations for the kids to understand what this is, and then after that the next ones are going to be more resilient. It has happened to many other things like technology and so on. So let's have a second question, if you still remember what that was.
Yes. So the Framework Convention on AI, Human Rights, Democracy and the Rule of Law, that's the full name. And yeah, it's a good question. Will it work? First of all, we need to wait to be ratified by a sufficient amount of countries to come into force. So that's a little hiat that we still have to cover. But member states are signing up, and the ratification process is ongoing, and the Council of Europe is supporting member states to do so. I think now the question is, the whole thing stands or falls with member states committing to actually implementing what they're signing up to. And this is very much now us here in this room, equality bodies, other regulators, civil society actors, but also state authorities that are in. We now need to commit to finding ways of doing this in practice, because it's all about what does this mean in practice. So that's why I find what we're doing so interesting, because we're developing tools, we're developing training, we're creating spaces for dialogue to explore, and this needs to happen everywhere. So for me, if you ask, can this happen anywhere else? The question is clearly yes. I think the risk is very high that this is going to happen quite soon at some case again. And I think we see several cases in different countries where there are public services that use some kind of an algorithmic system, and then there's a reasonable doubt, there's a reasonable assumption of discrimination in different ways. Thank God, I think it's not so, the impact has been less severe as in the Netherlands maybe, but there are going to be much more. And for me, this comes back to the other point. It's better now to speak up, to be vigilant, to raise it quickly so that we can act quicker, so that the consequences and the impacts are lower. So for me, the prevention work is very important, practice assessments and stuff like that, but also we really need to start learning that there is a risk all the time, we need to be vigilant all the time, and we need to act quicker when we suspect that something's happening. And for this case, I hope that by public training of the general public, more critical thinking, they raise more complaints, equality bodies and others are able to identify those claims much quicker, group class action maybe helps, so that we get a better picture of what's the scope, what are the problems, so that we can learn again. We have to be much more adaptive, and we need to have much more oversight of what's happening. So we need more cases, people need to report more, not because we want to pinpoint and you're wrong and you're right, no, because we need to act and avoid bigger impact. I think that's really what we need to learn.
Great. More questions there? Yes, please. There's the microphone, hopefully is here in the front. Here, there. You may have to raise your hand again just so the microphone finds you.
Thank you. It's really interesting to hear all of these examples. My question is to do with this implementation of mitigations before the harm happens, or at least identifying them as they go along, kind of moving beyond impact assessments that just say there is no problem. I think a really good example of this being done is in the directive for platform workers. I mentioned this in the session earlier, but in this directive, which applies to gig economy workers in the EU, that they have representatives. There's a requirement for them to have representatives who will effectively be able to see certain information about how is the algorithmic system that's managing these workers performing, which could include, you know, discriminatory outcomes, and have an opportunity to feed in. And in the directive, it also specifies that if the gig economy employer is above a certain size, they have to fund some technical expertise to assist the representatives of the workers to understand what the technical situation is. And I think this is a brilliant example of how it could be implemented. But I think it's obvious how it could work in the employment context, because we have this kind of trade union system already. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts if something similar could be adopted for like public sector decision making or other situations, and whether you've seen any examples of this kind of representatives for workers or, you know, other people in society.
I would like to direct this to Rūta, if you may.
I am not the right person for this question. I'm not a lawyer. You have
Fair
to
enough.
listen. There are Valérie is the
Equal
lawyer.
opportunity to answer questions. Volunteers.
Yeah, maybe I can because we had a decision last year on those platform workers, also from saying that there is a risk of discrimination in algorithmic management of those workers on the platform. And we also have a discussion with the representative of those platform workers, because we know there are sometimes also coming from immigrant backgrounds, and they really don't have this reflex of being member of a trade union or having a representative. But we try to also convince them to know how to detect potential discrimination in the way they are managed by the algorithm from whatever Uber or other platform, and we also invited to our training, the training mentioned by Menno, that we are doing on AI on discrimination with it's mostly administration, ministries, but also civil society organization, and we invited it's a public agency who is doing the dialogue between representative of the platform workers and the platforms themselves. So they were interested in also following this course on discrimination, and hopefully it will also help them to be sure that they will. So, and the question was, should we have a type of directive, platform directive, also for the public sector? That could be, quite interesting, but I will maybe...
Well, maybe just to add, sorry, one thinking is that I think the several national human rights institutions that I know already have networks in place with civil society partners or with other actors. So I think there are already lots of platforms or coalitions or networks in place. So I think, can we bring them up to speed on the AI question? So, for example, if you have a national network with civil society that works with groups that are particularly targeted by discrimination, can we bring them on board to start becoming sensitive to, oh, there might be an AI element, and start triggering reports? And then the next question is, okay, how do you create insights and things like that? So I think we need to utilize already what's there. And we just need to think a little bit out of the box. What networks do we already have, and how can we bring them on board on this discussion? I think that's and it could be this way with the trade unions, but there are other ways of doing it. But that's the important part.
Right. I'm working under the assumption that I have to do the 2 final slides within the time I am being shown.
Can I quickly jump in?
Yes, please, of course.
Because it happens to be something that we're thinking about with technical standardization for the Act. It's a big, in many ways, it's one of the biggest challenging with our contribution as Equinet to technical standards is, how do you include stakeholder consultation and, more concretely, inputs by affected persons in technical standardization? If I understood you, you're going in this direction, right? So I was thinking more of a structured, systematic, formalized process through which those affected are going to be involved at different critical junctions of For example, when you define what is a risk to fundamental rights, when you test a system, when you decide what risk is acceptable, because risk is not absolutely eliminated always. There is a residual or a list, and who decides what risk is okay to have?
Yes.
And what are the trade-offs, but how to include affected communities there. So this is something, it's confidential information, so I cannot reveal more, but I highly recommend an article by the academic and head of the project that Equinet participated in, Karen Young. So it's, if you Google Karen Young risk management, the article basically goes through the foundations of what we as Equinet try to embed also with regard to participatory approach in risk management. And there are more resources on our website on equality by design, deliberation, oversight. It's a conceptual framework for AI governance developed by Professor Young. And there also we have some webinar which touches upon participation, talking to engineers about it, like what can we actually do in terms of, that's it.
So that was the answer to the last question. I will need to come up with a question now for which each of you can answer in one sentence. So that's going to be tricky. So what is it that, in one sentence, what is it that you will take from this conference and something new that will change how you work next week? If there is any.
No, I always believe in dialogue, so it's not new because we're dialoguing a lot with many stakeholders, but today these days were really important to have tech developers, policymakers, independent institutions, and to gather together. So for me, it's really having this dialogue, but also because we don't dialogue so much with tech industry. And I think we should maybe have more opportunities to also understand their real
First you need to catch their attention because they're all reading ChatGPT and looking at videos. Again, within a few sentences.
I was in a panel's work group C about how do you bring groups that are affected on board. And there were many questions there on how do you build their capacity, do you develop a pool of people that can be then called upon to give feedback. There's a lot of questions there still to be done with those, the end users, particularly those at risk. How do you bring them on board? And I think that's my next question that I'll bring home.
Beautiful. Please.
The societal impact of AI. Thinking more about that. I think it will be a challenge for the non-discrimination framework.
Definitely so. And Rūta?
I'm gonna bring the good thing that this is a good opportunity for Lithuanian partners to be in Estonia and to actually have a talk about AI because we never meet in Lithuania. So networking was the big thing that I'm personally taking of this thing, and I think my colleagues as well.
Go Baltics. So, thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure having you here. I will now have to give you the results of your votes. If you want to, you can stay here. How do you prefer? So, may I have the number 1 slide? I already see it on my monitor. So, risk management. The work, my day job is I am doing research. But when it's night, then it's my superhero mode. Then I'm in the Estonian Academy of Sciences, where the Standing Committee of Cybersecurity has took upon itself the task of improving risk management practices in Estonia, which means that we take these, let's say, large-scale societal risks, which are caused by something digital, and we are going slightly beyond the scopes of classical cybersecurity there. So what we do is we have brought together people from various backgrounds, researchers, technical entrepreneurs, various kinds of lawyers, social scientists, government people from here, there, fundamental rights people, and we're trying to do risk evaluations together, where the technical people, the lawyers, the public servants are all grading the same risk with the same methodology. It's a lot of fun. So what we did today was I gave you a scenario and you graded it. So how do you read data? I will try to do my best at interpreting it for you now. So it is slightly bad for people of lower vision to interpret, so I will try to use a lot of words. So the left, the blue one, is the impact score. And the average impact you graded to be 3 out of 4, means that you thought that at some given time it would be up to 5 to 10 people, 5 to 10% of the population would be impacted. In Estonian standards, that would mean 60 to about 100,000 and 130,000 people. That's quite a lot. So that's quite high. You really, really gave a high impact score for this. I would say that, and that's the average. So because the box is very big, the top is there at 4 and the bottom is here at 2. That means that a lot of your votes were between 2 and 4. That there is a tiny line here, the thin one going down to 1 also shows that some people said 1, which is totally fine. That's why we have multiple people in the room. For the likelihood, your grade was almost similar. The average was pretty much the same. And the scores were again mostly in the 2 to 4, which meant that you interpreted that this risk is basically already, some of you said that this is already here. And I gave you evidence for that. In the first slide, I gave you that there are already reports of 3 people who have been affected, possibly affected by this. But the question is that then you made the mental jump from this evidence to 60,000 people getting financial losses. And I'm also good at this exercise. I can also very nicely build up chains of events from some evidence, some threat, some system architecture to many people getting damages. But one of the things I did knowingly was I put there financial losses. And you can imagine financial losses coming many ways. People will be offered jobs that are beyond their abilities. They will have to settle for lower salaries. And because computers said this way, they will accept it. They will not know to fight. So that's the kind of situation we would be having. But the question is that technically the number of people damaged by this should not be higher than the number of job seekers, maybe, let's say, within a year or 2 or 3. So if their number of job seekers is, let's say, 100,000 over the next 3 years, then how many of them will get a bad computer result? So estimating the number of people actually being damaged, it comes down to statistics again a bit. But I was totally certain that coming to this crowd here, we will get very high scores. Can we have the next slide, please? Yes, so this is a distribution of your choices. So on the horizontal scale, we have the impact score. So it means that here we have low impact, and here we have high impact. And on the vertical score, we have likelihood. Low likelihood here, high likelihood there. The number of the circles here show that these combinations of, let's say, evaluations were highly probable. Some of you said that it's 4-4. It's going to be immediately, and over 10% of the population will be affected. That is sort of like a catastrophe level event. If this is an actual thing, then technically in our risk management methodology, showing a risk like this to a decision maker should prompt them to act immediately. They should take calls 5 minutes after exiting that meeting. So we're trying to calibrate our risk management methodology that way. And again, in fundamental rights, I am fully aware that there is no delaying. You have to solve all fundamental rights problems because the Constitution is there for a reason. So what we are trying to say is that these scores help the decision maker to decide which risk to tackle first. It helps prioritize, because if you have suddenly 100,000 people getting financial losses, you should kind of get on it, is what we're trying to say. So in practice, when I run risk analysis for things like election integrity or something like that, then the group is a lot more, let's say, compact. It converges slightly better than we did here today. We are a little bit all over the place, which is to be expected, because we haven't done this before, and I think if we did it for the 10th time, we would be much better at this. So that was my intervention. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much to all the panelists and to everybody here.
Thank you.